Yeah, so fruits that I eat: blueberries, raspberries. I have at least one of those.
Give the people the intro that they love.
You mean, oh, okay? So we picked up in the middle of a conversation. The pre-show conversation was about fruit, different fruits that we like. But welcome to Performance Mesh, episode 11, where you get a mix of training, sports, everything in between. We picked up right with talking about fruits that we like and dislike. I know we actually did talk a decent amount of nutrition last time, or 2 times ago. But my name is John O'Neill. I'm here with my co-host Eric Manis. Eric, give the background of how we started this conversation.
So, I followed a really cool author named Brad Stuberg. He wrote a couple of books with Steve Magnus. I really like him. He's pretty cool. He's like a down to earth guy who's just trying to get better, right? And I consider that if people were describing us, that would be us, right? Pretty cool guys who are trying to get better, right? So I gravitate toward him, and he said, a couple like 6 tenets to do every day is to snack on fruit. So I've been doing that. I've been eating a lot of oranges, apples. I got some pineapple and some delicious blueberries over here. So I asked John if he likes pineapple, and I asked him what fruits does he eat. So we're gonna hear about it right now.
Yeah, so pineapple, not really. I had pineapple for maybe the first time ever. At least the first time having like a full serving size early this summer. Not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of tropical fruits like mango, pineapple. It's too much. But blueberries and raspberries are the go-to. I like oranges. There's too much work though. I'm not, I'd rather just drink orange juice. Orange juice might be the greatest drink ever invented.
Really?
Yeah. If orange juice was a 0-calorie drink, I would drink orange juice all day.
All day? Instead
of water, yeah.
Now, do you want to tell the story?
So there was a time when I was 15 when
This sums up John O'Neill.
I did drink about 96 ounces of orange juice a day for like most days for like almost 8 months, like most of that school year. I would just buy one of those.
Tell them why your mom was okay with it.
And so I didn't eat any fruits or vegetables. So she was like, all right, if that's the closest thing that you're going to get to a fruit or vegetable, like go for it. So I used to have a 96-ounce carton pretty much every day, a couple glasses at breakfast, lunch, after school, when I got home from sports, at night as well, like talking like 8 to 12 glasses a day of orange juice. And I was actually at church. This was like springtime. So I remember it was baseball season, probably like May. It was actually at church, and it felt like one of the worst pains I've ever felt in my stomach. And it's actually to this day probably the worst stomach ache I've ever had. And it was like fairly like kind of sudden onset. Like it started feeling like a cramp in my stomach, and then it started like really burning. And I remember going out to the church lawn and throwing up like straight stomach acid. And like just clear. And if you've ever thrown up stomach acid, it's a horrible feeling. I remember throwing that up on the lawn of the church. My dad took me to the hospital, and I remember they like were checking for like if I had appendicitis and all this stuff, and they basically determined that my acidity level in my stomach was just way too high. And so they told me no acid heavy foods or drinks for like I don't know what it was, 2 or 4 weeks, and then after that like 1 glass a day of orange juice max. And so I pretty much stick to that to this day. It's 16 years ago now, but I do not have more than a glass a day because of that, essentially.
Do you still drink orange juice? Like, is it in your fridge right now?
Oh yeah, Monday through Friday. Really? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, every workday morning, I'm having a cup of orange juice at breakfast.
Really?
Yeah.
Now do you ever do the spinach shake? Stand up for doing spinach shake?
I've seen that. I don't really like mixing greens in shakes.
Okay.
I'd rather just eat them.
What's that?
Eat them? I drink athletic greens every day, if that counts. But that's a pre-made powder. But like to go through the work of putting getting the vegetable in the smoothie and all that, I'm not a huge like blended smoothie guy. Every once in a while I'll have a phase where I do that a lot. Do you drink a lot of smoothies?
I'm out of greens powder right now, and
Okay.
that's one of the five 5 points you have to do every day in the program I'm in. So I've been doing this frozen spinach orange juice smoothie, which is, I'm not as high maintenance as you are,
But
as everybody can see.
look, I'm very low maintenance as a person, but internally, I'm high maintenance in terms of food and
Yeah. It takes
whatnot.
a lot. It takes a lot for you to take care of yourself, which is fine. You don't. No one else has to deal with it, right?
Yeah, that doesn't affect other people. I don't know why you put something in orange juice to make it taste different. Like, just leave it the way it is.
It doesn't taste any different.
I don't know if I believe you.
Frozen spinach does not change the taste of orange juice.
Okay, I'll try that. I'll try that. I will say, like, I'm not sure. I'm still not sure I believe you, but I will actually probably try it tomorrow. Now you say it.
Have you ever tried it?
No,
Do you have frozen spinach though?
I think I have frozen spinach. I don't use it a whole lot. I usually use the fresh spinach.
Yeah,
Frozen
just
vegetables.
frozen spinach.
Frozen
Frozen
vegetables,
spinach.
like when you cook them, there's too much water involved.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like too much moisture in my food.
Yeah, you don't want, especially with vegetables, like you want them, like I like a slight char in the vegetable.
Hey, you gotta take care of yourself.
Yeah.
The way you're going, nobody else is.
So let's get into some training stuff. I know
Okay.
there's several possible topics here. I know we talked briefly either this morning or yesterday about some med ball concepts, some ideas. You made an interesting point on how it seems like a lot of things in the field change fairly rapidly from I'll say the things that change the fastest, at least from my perspective, are things on like the mobility corrective exercise, like stuff that might look like it fits in a warm up or like a filler section of a program. That stuff changes like incredibly fast, I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
Then everything like other things, it's kind of just depending on what you're exposed to. But what is your experience with that?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I feel like when we first started training people, it was all about like banging heavy weights. Like, I feel like there was a much stronger powerlifting influence. And now I feel like it's shifted, at least with the people that I see, in that speed is kind of like the way people are spending a lot of time now. I just don't really, I mean, I don't really see a lot of like big powerlifting influences in the sports performance world, right? Like,
yeah, I'm not even convinced that's like the right thing though, I feel like there is a period where you have to get, as a coach, at least as a coach, maybe not every athlete, but as a coach, you probably should get good at coaching things that move slowly first, because you're going to be a lot more proficient at coaching things that move slowly than things that move quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of sprints. I'm still not totally confident that we're doing the right thing,
Yeah, whereas you could watch a squat or deadlift or a bench or whatnot and be like, all right, I can help this out. It's also just like it's much easier to coach that stuff because you have time. You have time between. You might even have time between reps if your cueing is efficient, and if you talked ahead of time and set and like kind of explained like, all right, hey, I might say this during the set, etc. But and you'll definitely have time between sets, but a lot of like high speed stuff is really hard to cue. That's why like we've talked before, we had Jordan on a few episodes ago, but like having a good sport coach can be really hard to find because it's really hard to coach things that move quickly.
And I now that you're saying that, I just thought about like the biggest changes I made in somebody's sprint technique is when I had filmed it and actually slowed the rep down, showed them what I want them to do, show them what they're doing, show them what I want them to do, and there, voila, right? Like, I feel like a lot of coaching is just like remembering the stuff that works and being conscious and not like lazy. That's not what I would say I'm lazy, but like being a little more detailed in what you're doing and like just like knowing that you have to like do a little bit extra if you really want to like make a change. Intentional coaching is what I would say.
Yeah, like I remember first getting in the field, reading a lot of like Dan John stuff, and he would always say in his books, like, don't, like, you can't get bored, or don't ever get bored.
Mhm.
If you get bored with the basic stuff and you start skipping that stuff and skipping the really straightforward cues that work, you're gonna actually make people like worse, or not help them get better, because like 80+% of it is executing basic fundamental things really well, and it's the additional 10 to 20% that like separates like good to great, or
Mhm.
separates like getting someone to a B+ proficiency to an A. But F to B+ is kind of the same process over and over again.
Mhm. Oof, F to B pluses. That's not easy. In any if you got an F, it's hard to get up to a B plus in a class.
So I had an intern the other day. We have week 2 interns right now, and this kid has no coaching experience, big training background, but no real coaching experience. And I thought he had a chance to be a pretty good fit, just given his background. And sometimes we'll take chances on people like that from a standpoint of like, all right, like they've done everything they need to do except coach, right? And we can help them through that process. But it's not everybody. I would say like 9 out of 10 interns we have some kind of coaching background, right? But he said to me, I feel like I'm missing a lot, because the only way I know how to coach something is just to say what to do and demonstrate it. And I was like, if you do that 90% of the time, you'll, like, 90% of your career, you'll be like, that's what you need to do. And a lot of
Yeah.
times it's the people with like really extensive educational backgrounds, and not like, if they have like a lot of like textbook knowledge, right, but not necessarily like the actionable or the practical side of it, or maybe they haven't trained that much themselves, so they don't know what it's like to get cued, that they like complicate the hell out of everything. It's like the best coaches to me, like so Cody referenced this last time we had people on, but when we watched Derek Hansen coach the one time in the Hamptons, we had like that small seminar where Derek coached a couple of sprinters, and we watched it in real time. His cues were like ridiculously simple.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh yeah, if I just say this, he'll do this. I want him to do this. Here's why. I'll just tell him this. Tells him one thing. Boom, looks better.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, well, this is the guy that we're paying to watch coach. And all like
Yeah.
pretty experienced coaches. Like we were, at
No,
least
we were
I
green.
felt we were the guys that were like kind of outclassed in that group of people watching him coach.
Yeah, I don't think we were the worst, but we were
Yeah.
towards the bottom.
Yeah, we were not like, nobody was coming there to like learn from us, right?
No.
But yeah, it was like it was very refreshing to see that kind of thing. Stuff like that has always stuck with me. But yeah, like the interns was like kind of concerned that he wasn't like doing enough when he's coaching someone. I'm like, no, like you might have to do something after seeing something happen, but when you intro anything, you've got to stick with the bread and butter.
Yeah. I mean, I do this sometimes. Because a lot of times it's me and 68 other people. So like if somebody has a newer exercise, I'll just like kind of like talk about what I want them to do, and I'll look over and it's like, oh God, like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, the demo is probably the most important thing that you do, right? So everybody needs to see what you're doing, and it almost always, if you demo it properly, like things are going to go well.
So I've had a lot of like very fortunate timing experiences within this field, like, oh, right place, right time kind of thing, or kind of stumbled across that opportunity or this opportunity or whatever it is. At least in my eyes, that's the way I see it. But my first weekend at Rand Phones, literally the first week I was there as an intern, and I think I actually like started a week early because I was like itching to like get going, and I asked to start. And like literally the first weekend I was there was Nick Winkelman's seminar.
Oh, wow.
At the time, I'll be honest, I didn't know who Nick Winkelman was at that time. It was 8+ years ago now, but he was there the first weekend I was there, and I was like, all right, this is like what in my head, I'm like, this is what every weekend the field is going to be like. There's going to be this like people that want to talk shop and learn from each other at all times. And so I remember being at that, and one of my biggest takeaways was Nick Winkelman. He talked a lot of, he does still, I assume, talk a lot about like coaching and cueing, and he's the one who has the language of coaching, right? That's his book.
Mhm.
But he talked a ton about external cueing and demonstrations, and he kept saying, and Nick's like, I don't know if I want to put a weight on Nick. He's a nice guy, but he was a big guy at that time. He might have been like 270 to 300. That'd be my guess, right?
Really?
Yeah,
He was that
large.
big?
He was large, yeah, and
Uh-huh.
and he was like drenched in sweat, right? And but he kept like demonstrating these plyo things. Like he basically taught Exos his whole like speed prep or movement preps and into like speed progression model. And he would demonstrate like 3 yards of everything or 5 yards of everything, like literally everything. There's nothing he talked through, and or nothing he just talked through. And I remember he kept saying like he would do something and then he'd go 3 good reps. That's all you need. 3 good reps. He's like, I don't actually, and he kept saying like, I don't actually train. I don't actually do any of this stuff. But he's like, I can nail reps 1 to 3.
Mhm.
And that's always stuck with me. It's like, huh, if you just know how to cue and you can nail up to 3 reps of something, you can coach most things.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was 300 pounds. How many coaches?
Well, like I said, I don't know if he was actually 100 pounds, but he was large. Like he very openly at that time did not like we would talk about how he didn't train and like just like coaching, not actually training, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I'm sure you see these newer coaches like fumble through taking people through new programs, right? It's like you just have to kind of show them what you want them to do first and foremost, and 75% of the time you probably get there.
I think of it or refer to it sometimes with interns as like literally show and tell.
Mhm.
Show it and tell them what to do.
Yep.
It's not like how do I search for the perfect internal or external cue or the perfect like use of what muscles they're trying to do, whatever, like there's so many ways to complicate coaching, but literally just show and tell and then see what happens.
Yeah.
It's like show and tell, see what happens, read and react.
Yeah. It's like, all right, do you feel this? I felt that in my back more in the tablet. Okay, well, do this,
Yeah.
But if you don't need, if you just show them, they might not even feel that. So and like the less information, the better.
There's someone referenced this to me the other day, but the idea of like, and I forget who referenced this to me, so I apologize for whose thought I'm taking, but it's not an original thought, but this like the idea of like a bell curve of like someone who knows nothing and someone who knows everything at the far left and far right, and how it's actually like the sweet spot in the middle of like most effective. And so like if you know everything about something or you're saying everything about something, it's like almost like knowing nothing. And so like the middle is like, all right, just give them what they need to know. And so if you only are expressing this is what I know about something, it might actually be the optimal way to do it.
I'm with it. Perfect.
Let's talk about we could either talk med ball progressions or we could because we are talking about it right now, like how your own training and athletic background has influenced your coaching style. One of the two, because we're kind of already talking about the latter, even though I know we were going to talk about med ball stuff originally.
Let's hop in it. Option
B. So this sounds like old and curmudgeon like, but I think it's super important to actually have done the stuff that you're going to demonstrate. And I don't mean like yeah, the last time I did a bunch of the movement prep stuff for 30 minutes or whatever the longest time that we might give somebody in terms of like dynamic work for that long it's probably years, but you have to at least be able to like demonstrate a skip really well. And you should have done it and know what it feels like, or like if you're introducing a bunch of new stuff, and that's like one of the biggest flaws to me of like people who just like use Instagram for Con Ed is they see it and they're like, oh yeah, my clients will get that. It's like, well, you're at least a session a session, if not a week to a month away from saying, I know what that feels like. I know how to do it.
Mhm.
Now I can implement it. And so it's like, I think people are doing, I think you're doing yourself a disservice by not at least trying this stuff, but in all reality, you're doing your clients a disservice because you have no idea what it actually feels like or how to like navigate your way through it. Or if they say something like, oh, I feel this, like it shouldn't come out of left field, right? It should be like,
Yeah, you're
all
like, oh
right, cool.
shit.
Yeah. Right. So what approaches have you had within that in terms of like using your own training to get better as a coach, both in the past and today?
Um, so and I would think that the things that I did early on were probably more banging and clanging than anything, right? Like it was just a heavy strength influence because that's what I thought was the most important, and we could have just kind of like sprinted just to because that's what somebody said to do, right? Um, so and I think as I like saw things and I just thought of my own limitations as an athlete, like I was the probably top 5 strongest person on my college football team, right? But it's very far from the top 5 best players, right? So I just that always just example just always kind of just stick in my head of like, I wonder what would have happened in my athletic career if I sprinted a little bit more, or I spent a little more time, um, doing all that stuff that looks a little more like football instead of just like hammered 5-3-1 and took every max out set to the absolute like
Hey,
explosion, right?
5-3-1. I don't know how popular or common it still is in the field. Is still awesome.
Oh yeah, I mean it's amazing. But like I didn't do 5-3-1 properly. So after every third week, I just re-estimated my max instead of like doing what you're supposed to do. So like if I'd hit 405 or 10, like I just did that was my new max. So every month I set a new max, which is like not the way you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to just like add a little bit each month. So you're still hitting like very sub max weights. Like by the end of it, I was just like, I was barely hitting the 5, barely hitting the 3s, and barely hitting the 1s over like 9 to 12 weeks. So that's not what Jim Wendler intended. But yeah, so I mean, and the more I kind of like put more time into sprint training, I definitely like tried to I think I definitely. I mean, I can pretty much demonstrate everything that I want, but you do have to try it, right? Like there is a certain. It has to look like you can do it, and you do have to have some kind of like, no, this is what I mean, or this is how it feels. Because if you just pull the feeling out, it's just uh, and have no context for it. I feel like you're really missing out. The athlete is missing out.
Yeah, I agree with that. So like I know like especially on the movement mobility side, like there's some stuff that like feels stupid when you do it. And honestly, that's a big deterrent for me to program it.
Mhm.
It's a huge deterrent for me to program it. I don't want my
Like
athletes
what?
doing
What would be an example?
different breathing exercises,
Mhm.
some like some kind of unique kettlebell stuff, for example. In years past, I'm trying to think through a lot of like what's the word? Like there was a push at least a few years ago for like different triplanar movements and like combo
Mhm.
exercises and stuff like that. And I just
Yeah, yeah,
honestly I always felt like an idiot when I did that stuff.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
that's is it wrong to make that like your programming theory? Like, oh, if you feel dumb doing it, you probably shouldn't use it. Yeah, it is wrong if that's your only theory. But at the end of the day, like my training edge is high enough. I was an okay enough athlete where I could figure stuff out. Like I shouldn't feel like an idiot doing an exercise, right? And if I
Yeah.
do, or if I feel like, oh, I have no idea what I'm working on, I'm probably not going to program it.
Mhm.
And so some like mobility stuff, if it's really hard to find or feel the stretch, and you're supposed to find or feel the stretch, I don't think that's the best choice if that's the goal, right? Like there should be a really easy, like any corrective exercise, you should, at least to me, you should know what you're working on
Hmm.
and be like, okay, I'm trying to get back into this hip. I'm trying to shift weight from side to side or like laterally. I'm trying to like increase my overhead shoulder flexion, whatever it is. But so I have a tough time wrapping my mind around stuff that the athlete can't either see immediate return on investment from or can't feel something and feel positive about what they're doing while they're doing it. So that's one of my biases, but
Hmm.
I mean, it's not like that's a high percentage of exercises, right? But that is something that like has definitely weighed on my programming style. So like I know the other thing that was like a big shift for me, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now at this point, that was purely based on my own training was like historically at CSP, it used to be like, oh, week 4 is the deload.
Hmm.
Everyone gets a week 1 deload now for me. And they have for like 3+ years.
Hmm.
Because one, you're the most beat up in week 1 because new stuff, right? So it's, you're gonna potentially have the most muscular soreness. But two, like it actually gives you a chance to learn the movement and not be like,
Yeah, yeah,
I'm spending 2+ hours in this gym trying to figure out this new stuff. Like, no, get a couple good sets in and then
yeah,
move
yeah.
on.
That's smart.
Yeah. And then like by the time you get to week 4, you're like, oh, I feel great with this exercise. I want to have more of it versus having
Hmm.
less of it.
Yeah.
That's been a shift that was based off my own training. And I will say sometimes within that, if I have like somebody only doing like 2 sets in week 1, it might be like 2 real sets. So like 2 practice sets and 2 real sets, something like that. Or I'll write like ascending RPEs. So you go up,
Hmm.
you're going up in weight each set. So you really only have 1 or 2 pretty like challenging sets. But like if you take any time off and come back to the gym and you're hitting like 4 sets right away, and then you're deloading 3 weeks later, like I feel like one of those is off.
Yeah, I would think so. And week 1 is not the best time to feel like shit, right? So,
Yeah, it's gonna make it harder to learn technique on stuff. Yeah, that's another influence that like is not like, oh, I read this somewhere, I'm gonna
mhm.
start using it. That's a, hey, I felt this, I know what it's like. This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
this is ideal. And we kind of got into that a little bit last week, talking about like training around vacations, but
Hmm.
like how to educate clients on that front. But those are definitely some big ones. But the other one, and you could probably talk like the neuroscience end of it, which we're not going to. That's not what this podcast is about.
I was ready. I was ready. I got excited for a second.
Uh,
I
somehow
had them on my brain anatomy ready to
I
go.
saw your cheeks getting real puffy there, to getting excited, um, but um, you could say like, oh, like trying to create like some kind of reward cycle in your head that feeds I guess to use the non-scientific term, like the momentum of getting back into the gym and enjoying it. But at the end of the day, like I want whoever it is, athlete or non-athlete, to enjoy training.
Mhm.
So if I have 2 options, or if I'm down to 2 options of like, oh, what should I pick in this thing? And I know someone is really going to like one and the other one is going to be kind of blah to them, I'm always going to pick the one that they're really going to like,
Mhm.
because then they'll give more effort on it. They'll be more bought in. The more they're into the gym, the more their habits outside of the gym are going to be affected by it, and that's like very influenced by my own training. Like
Yeah.
if you're enjoying what you're currently doing in the gym, you're going to work a hell of a lot harder at it.
Mhm.
Right? That's and people might hear that and be like, oh, my athletes are super motivated at all times. Everyone's
Yeah.
motivated until they're not, right? And
Mhm.
our goal is to delay, or everyone can be motivated until they're not. Our goal is to delay the period where they like just are sick of it, they're over it, etc. I think that mentality breeds like the athlete that like trains their ass off when they're an athlete and then they stop playing sports and they just stop going to the gym as a whole. right? If it's like, oh, I hate the gym, but I need to work hard at it for my sport. I think that
Mhm.
mentality like sets you up for like a long-term failure.
Yeah, you're not going to get a ton out of that. I mean, the person that loves to train is always going to get a lot more out of it, right?
Yeah.
And like also like you're not just the only. It would be one thing if you went to the gym and then returned to your bed and for the other 20 hours, but like other shit happens during the day that is going to like change your mood, right? Like if you get a bad grade on the test or your parents are giving you a hard time, like you're not going to show up to the gym with a great attitude, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you further that with like, oh, this fucking sucks. Like, I don't want to do this front foot elevated, rear foot elevated safety bar, ISO hold. You know, like this is you gotta pick your battles because in the end, the best you're getting is like as some developmental exercise. It's not going to like make a huge difference between one thing and another.
You know what is you what you just said reminded me. You know what has definitely influenced my programming from a standpoint of like of that is influenced from my own training. I feel like large volumes of stuff that doesn't require high effort is so boring and monotonous in the gym that at some point you're going to ask yourself, why am I doing this? And so, like,
Mhm.
programming wise, I don't want to have my athletes feel that way when they're training.
Mhm.
Like, you should always know why you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes it might not require like maximal or high effort, right? It should always require at the minimum high attention to detail. And sometimes the attention to detail is the effort. Like, all right, you got to work hard on this.
Mhm.
But high attention to detail or slash precision or high effort or both. But
Mhm.
if it requires neither, like it's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty boring. Like, oh, this is a mobility drill that I don't feel at all. Like,
yeah, yeah.
what's the point of it? What am I doing?
There's nothing worse when you like set up and you give somebody like a mobility exercise you think it's gonna help, and they're like, where am I supposed to feel it? And you like set them up, and they're like, I still don't feel it. Like, all right, well, scratch that.
Yeah, yeah,
Get it the hell out of there. Just like cross it out hard.
yeah. Early in my career, I definitely thought that that was like, all right, well, I got to coach them into it better. And now I'm just like, all right, change. Like, let's do a different version.
Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a bad choice.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, like sub maximal lifting earlier, the idea of it, like if lifting is too sub max at all times, you're just not going to get any better at anything.
Mhm.
Like, what's the point? Like, nobody who goes to the gym to stay exactly the way they are, right?
Not
Who
many
like,
people.
or some people do accidentally, right?
Mhm.
But if they're paying for your expertise, part of your expertise is like, all right, you're trying to change this about yourself
Mhm.
positively. So we need to do something that is going to disrupt you or disrupt your like or disrupt your system a little bit, at least a little bit, so that you come back a better version of yourself over a period of time. That's just like very straightforward general adaptation syndrome. So like if there's no element of progressive overload in a program, or there's no clear element of progressive overload in a program, that is like as a coach, you should try to avoid that, right? And that's stuff that I think, like, yeah, you read about it in books, but until you like feel it yourself, you're like, wow, I'm just like wasting my time big time with this. Like, you
Mhm.
don't really appreciate how much of a waste of time that feels like.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, those were just like training thoughts that were on my mind recently, and it's uh, partly like you go, at least my job, you go your job as well, but we go in waves of like throughout the year. But this time of year is it's two relatively unique things. It's like new interns, which I get 3 times a year, and so I'm always like, and they're if they listen to this, they're gonna know this now. But I'm always curious who actually trains and who doesn't, because if they don't, it's like a major red flag to me.
Yeah, yeah. You're
It's a
not gonna
major
have
red
it.
flag because they're going to at some point they're going to become disinterested in the field because this is not their hobby as well as their career.
Mhm.
Right? It's just their career. And which is fine in short spurts. It's not fine long term. Like if you want to be in this field, you got to actually look at it like something that's additional to just what you do for work.
Mhm.
And then the second component of that is just having a lot of like brand new to the weight room kids start up and having to like rethink about these like very elementary training thoughts of like, all right, how do we ensure that there's progressive overload? How do we ensure that there's some elements that require high effort, but not everything requiring high effort because we're not trying to like crush them in the gym. How do we ensure that what they're doing is actually enjoyable? Because this is like that month one. If it's your first month in the weight room, it could develop months of hating the weight room or loving the weight room.
Yeah.
And usually the months of hating the weight room kid, like we just stop seeing, they just stop showing up. But we've got a chance to develop a program and develop an environment for them that they're like, all right, this is where I want to be for the next 6 months, 4 years, if they're a freshman in high school, et cetera.
What kind of what are some common themes that are coming up in the kids that are coming in? Anything stick out?
Maybe not different than in previous years. I will say my conversations with these kids have changed a lot over the years because I used to ask a lot more. This sounds bad, but I used to ask a lot more about them and their background and all this stuff, and I still do those. But now I basically, and I think I originally got this from your guy Andy McCloy, and listening to him on a podcast, I was like, huh, that's a much better way to do it. But actually like sit down and evals and like just basically try to outline for them what they need to accomplish between what they need to do between now and whatever date they provide as being like an end date in order to actually get better. And so it's stuff like, all right, hey, like, and I always try to put people almost like a church type mindset, like a community mindset where you put people in a group they're interested in joining and tell them what it's like to be a part of those people. So the made up group of people, it's not made up, it's the group of people that they don't know they're signing up to be in is the people who, I always use the term, the people who are successful here. And so I say the people are the people like you who have been successful here in the past. And I'll say like, hey, like, they're really consistent. They're there 3 days a week. They take care of themselves outside of here. They're really mindful of technique, but they also put in like really high effort. And so there are going to be times where we expect your effort to be really high. There are going to be times where we expect your attention to detail to be really high. But we're not going to do anything where neither is the case. And so stuff like that, and actually outline like, hey, we're realistic goals. So you're 130 pounds. Like, yeah, it would be awesome to weigh 215, but that's not realistic. And so I used to tell people like, oh, you want to gain 20 pounds off season? Yeah, that's great. Go for it. And now I'm a lot more like, all right, that is 3 pounds a month between now and the start of the season, 4 pounds a month, whatever the number is. We're going to check in on this and make sure that you're hitting those 4 pounds a month. And if you're at 4 pounds a month, and if you're not, we've got to reevaluate what we're doing. Or what you're doing outside of here. And so it puts them in this mindset of like, all right, I gotta really like change who I am.
You're setting the attention of what needs to be done.
Yeah, and that is stuff that when you go to like courses or read stuff on evals, like I don't think they teach that well.
No.
Or I don't think the field teaches that well because the field is so focused on like, oh, like if their straight leg raise says this, do this. It's like, who cares? Like the important thing is that the kid actually shows up to the gym 3 days a week for the next 3 months, like he said he was going to.
And his leg raise will get better too.
Yeah. Guess what? If your program doesn't suck, his leg raise will get better, and his life will be completely different in terms of the way he feels, moves, the way he looks, the way his confidence, etc. Right? We're talking like 14, 15, 16-year-olds, but I do a lot more like outlining what it's actually going to take from them, not just here's what we're going to do for you, than I ever have. And I think part of it is just experience of seeing it in the past and being like, wow, I should have done more of that in the past. But part of it too is these kids that are coming in now, like my role now, like Eric's not around. If I have an eval with a kid, it's like, oh, I have this guy. Like, it's not like, oh, who's the new guy here that's talking to me? And so it's not there's anything wrong with the new coaches, just that's they're gonna expect a different tone from me than they are the most recent hire, right? And the parent is as well. But yeah, what are that's at least where my head goes in evals. I'm not seeing anything crazy from a like movement standpoint. Nothing unusual. But I currently have programs for more untrained kids than I have in like 3 years, like the purely untrained kids. But what about you? What's the stock new guy that you're seeing right now?
We're a little slower now. I just wanted to touch on from like the business perspective, like the stuff that you're talking about. Like, I mean, it's pretty easy to make in a like the evaluation is like basically a sales meeting, right? Like you are potentially setting up a client whose like lifetime value could be like thousands of dollars, right? So like it's essentially sales, right? So by you like laying out all the things, that's just like it's just a really good sales call, and then it's really easy to make an offer when you have identified this very clear path to like what this person can become. So like that's awesome. And then another cool thing of what you're doing is like there's this marketing author named Seth Godin, and it's pretty easy to do in your setting. His like in this book that he wrote, it's called This Is Marketing. He says people like us do things like this. So like you have identified like the successful people, and this is what the successful people do, and all the people that are coming to train want to be successful, so they just want to be this guy. So it's like, all right, here's your avatar or whatever like fancy thing you wanted to say. Like that kid came in like you, and now look what he's doing right now. So just like there's it's probably wasn't intentional of what you were doing, but that's just like sales and marketing, really good sales and marketing techniques there.
Yeah, well, one, I appreciate it. It's always nice to hear that what you're doing internally is like, oh, actually backed up somewhere else. But it'd be kind of awesome if you were like, well, I actually read. So you're a lot better read in like sales and marketing stuff than I am. But it'd be kind of awesome if you were like, well, that's actually the opposite of what I've read that you should do. Here I am just sabotaging the business without knowing it. But yeah, it just goes in waves, right? So like you probably have years where you have a lot of seniors, and then like the next year you're like, oh my God, all my clients are 3 years younger.
And then we for whatever reason, the high school has a strong culture within the weight room. So a lot of kids do train there, and I haven't like fully infiltrated yet. But I just get a lot of 8th graders, right? So it's just these, pathetically small and weak people. And I am so just like the people that are coming right now. I don't do a ton of advanced stuff. Like we're just gonna do like really simple, basic stuff. And so the kids we're seeing right now are just haven't touched a weight room, and for whatever reason, we're seeing a lot of kids whose parents are really concerned about them lifting weights. So I think like honestly, like the social media stuff that I'm gonna start putting out for the gym is just gonna be like stuff from like the Andrews group and Stanford, where it's just like, no, like lifting weights is completely safe as long as you're with somebody who's like qualified and you're keeping things sub max and you're just focusing on form, like That's
Isn't
kind of
isn't
like,
that the worst? Like it depends how aggressive a parent is with what they want, but there's always a percentage in my head where if somebody wants something that you don't actually do, right? Or that is not what you believe in doing, that there's always a percentage of you, or at least of me, that it's like, all right, just tell the person like, hey, no worries, why don't you go somewhere else? No, like no big deal, right?
yeah.
And
I mean,
it's
I guess it's where you are in your business career, right? Like if you're you and somebody comes in and says that, or if I'm just saying like a very mature business like a CSP, like I mean, we got plenty of stuff going on over here, and the results speak for themselves. So if you want to come in and tell us how to do our job, like go see how the other gym down the street is going to handle it, right? But
yeah,
I mean, if you're a new business, you kind of have to go on the more okay. Well, this research says this, and this research says that, and you have to explain your approach more and kind of provide the social proof from the outside world.
yeah, totally. This has been awesome. Just talking sales, marketing, our own training, how it influenced coaching. We didn't get into medball stuff at all. I think next week we should pick up with some. Next week or the week after, pick up with some like sales and marketing stuff that I think coaches should know, and kind of the
Mhm.
process that each of us have gone through. It's been a little different, but I know we've had a lot of good conversations about stuff related over the years. So maybe that's a potential future topic in itself.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So we got a couple minutes here, real quick hitters. Okay, I'm gonna leave you with this one. All right. So
Okay.
just because I think you'll be able to come up with five pretty quickly. All right,
Okay.
I'm gonna pick a quick list five for tonight. That way we can move on with our lives and enjoy the rest of our evenings. But
I did
um,
have the thought that I was walking down this morning, didn't even drink my water yet, and I just thought how funny it is that you just have dozens and dozens of just lists. Like
just
that's not a normal thing.
yeah,
Just
um, yeah.
that are ready to go.
If I have like rankings, if I'm like debating a ranking of something in my head, I just keep it in a notes app,
Yeah.
um, and that way if it ever comes up in conversations, I can say, hey, you know what? I do have my top 42 movies ranked. And I change them sometimes. Sometimes I
Yeah.
rewatch one of them and I say, you know what, that should move up, that should move down.
Mhm.
I do have my top sports movies ranked, which is
Okay.
another category. But
Yeah.
let's go a little more specific today.
Uh-huh.
We're gonna go top five Adam Sandler movies.
Wow.
Okay.
We used to go see all the Adam Sandler movies in theaters, like as a family, and just piss our pants. It was so funny.
They're good.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
No,
good
mostly
movies
like
for. They are
'90s,
good
early
movies for
2000s,
families.
right? Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
They're good. They're generally like there's nothing too offensive going on there.
Yeah, yeah. And so this is my favorite five.
Okay.
And so I will say, like, if I did this list when I was 16, it would have been different. In terms of like what I thought was like really funny and what's not. Like, a couple of his old like ones that I thought were funny are just not good, right? Which will probably come up here. But
Mhm.
I think all five of these hold the test of time. And if they're on right now, I'm gonna at least watch a few scenes.
Okay. Billy Madison,
Number five.
the
Uh,
water boy.
The Waterboy was one of those that I thought was really fun when I was younger, and I think it's terrible now. It's so bad.
Happy Gilmore.
Number one, anytime Happy Gilmore's on, I'm getting hooked. I know like every scene in that movie. That is classic background TV for me.
Uh, Big Daddy.
Number two, probably his
Okay.
best serious, like kind of serious movie, right?
Yeah,
Like that has like a good messaging within it. It's kind of serious, and it's just a great movie.
it's a good movie. Um,
I debated making that number one.
wow. All right, Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore. What about Grown Ups?
Don't love the grown ups, either of them.
No, they're not funny.
No,
Well, you shouldn't.
they don't feel planned. They feel like Sandler just hung out with his buddies, and they after like 2 days, and they put together scenes of it.
Yeah. What about Click?
Click is like number 6 or 7 for me.
That's a serious movie too.
Yeah, it's a serious movie. That's a good one. I like Click.
The guy wishes away his life, and then he realizes that
Yeah, Click was.
he wasted his life.
My first 4 were pretty easy to rank, and then Click was in the category of this might make number 5.
I'm blanking on.
So number 3 is Anger Management.
Oh yeah.
I think that movie's so funny. Not everybody's favorite.
I'm surprised I'm not higher because the Yankees influence.
The Yankees are in it. Roger Clemens is in it. Jeter has a line in it. Yeah, a couple of my favorites.
Rocket, who's problem?
Yeah. And then number 4 is Mr. Deeds.
Mr. Deeds is good too.
Mr. Deeds is good. When he has as a sports fan, when he has the Jets rookie quarterback come in, and then he tells his dad that his son was swearing. That is so funny.
Yeah, that's probably what happened in your house.
Hey,
you swore in front of a lady. John Senior would have came down.
I still to this day I try not to swear. I think there are better ways to say things. Almost all.
I love to swear.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan in general. I'm not off put by it. I'm not off put by other people doing it, but I try to avoid swearing. Still, it's not like trying to be a goody two shoes. It's just.
You sound like it right now.
Nah, I feel like it. You're making me feel like
goody two shoes right now.
No, it's just I feel like you come across all different people. In my head, at least, you come across all different people, all different walks of life, and at some point, you don't want to say something to someone that's going to offend them when you could have just said it in a different way. So I just try to stay out of the habit of it. But it is what it is.
Okay, so there's got to be some goody two shoes around somewhere, yeah.
All right, Eric. We'll pick this back up soon. Episode 12, the number dozen.
Oh my God, we gotta pick from a special list of guests, right? Like, what do we?
We'll have a good one. We'll see you guys in a few days, and thanks for listening to us.